Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Living with Hep B. My name is Mick Del Rosario, and on today's episode, we are here with Bright Ansah. He was featured in the Just Be storytelling campaign with the Hepatitis B Foundation. And for this episode, we want to show that other communities are impacted by hepatitis B, not just the Asian Pacific Islander community in the work that SF Hep B Free Bay Area does. And we want to, have someone who is living with Hep B and just getting their perspective on it as well. So Bright Ansah is in the East Coast. He is originally from Ghana and immigrated to the United States, and now he is working in, you know, advocating by sharing his story and also participating in different various panels and other efforts as well. So Bright, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, yeah. So for folks who might have seen Bright's video, we'll add the link to the Just Be storytelling campaign video in the bottom of this video and on the YouTube page. But Bright, just give us a quick summary of what when you were participating in the Just Be storytelling campaign, and give us a summary about what the video is about.
Yeah. So the video, it's just a little tidbit about my life with hepatitis B, and it goes from not knowing that I have hepatitis B to knowing that I have hepatitis B, and so it kind of paints a clear picture of how my life was before finding out about hepatitis B and what happened from that point forward.
Yeah. And that's part of what the Hep B Foundation is working about. It's like highlighting different stories and showing how it affects multiple communities as well. And from my understanding, there is the Coalition Against Hepatitis for People of African Origin, or CHIPO, yeah, and CHIPO, and you know, uh, people of African origin are also disproportionately affected by hepatitis B. And according to the CDC, in some African communities in the United States, between 5 to 15% of people in those communities are affected by chronic hepatitis B. And for folks who have seen our previous episodes or who follow the work we do at SF Hep B Free Bay Area, we have 1 in 12 Asian American Pacific Islanders who are chronically affected with hepatitis B. So it is a disease that definitely affects multiple communities, and you definitely share similarities in that kind of challenges that these communities face, whether it be the lack of awareness about hepatitis B, the lack of testing, limited healthcare access, folks not knowing that they are infected in the first place, and with API communities, 2 out of 3 don't know that they are infected with hepatitis B, and you might know, Bright, like 1 in 4 will develop liver cancer if it's left untreated, which leads to liver cancer. Hence why it's called the silent killer. But we'll talk more about that as well. But I'm curious, what are you up to right now since the video came out several years ago? Like, give us an update of what you're up to.
Yeah. So since I did a video, it's been a little bit crazy, but crazy in a good way. So I've been busy a little bit before COVID. I had opportunity to volunteer with Hepatitis B Foundation and then Hepatitis B Initiative of Washington, D.C. And it's a kind of a community agency that goes into works in Virginia, DC, and Maryland, and they do education, testing, and they link patients to care. Those who don't have insurance, they are able to link them to care. So I've been involved in a little bit of it, and that's before COVID. But since COVID, everything seems to be on hold right now. I've also had the opportunity to currently serve on 2 advisory committees, one for National Hepatitis B Roundtable, and then I'm also on a liver cancer panel advisory committee for Hepatitis B Foundation. So it's really been interesting. It's really been fun along the way.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you're still active even after, after doing your storytelling video as well. And I think, as you mentioned about being part of the National Roundtable, it highlights that hepatitis B is a disease that affects, not just whether it's in the San Francisco Bay Area or in the East Coast and Maryland and DC area, but across the country, it definitely affects, multiple communities. As I mentioned earlier, that you immigrated from Ghana. When did you immigrate to the United States from Ghana?
I, that was in 2007.
Yeah,
So it's been about 14 years.
Yeah, nice. And what was it like growing up in Ghana?
Yeah, I mean it's quite different compared to the US. Ghana, I grew up close to my family and friends, and it's anybody who live in Africa knows it's a little bit tough. It's when we talk about survival of the fittest, it's really a challenge every time in Africa, especially if your family doesn't have money. And that happened to be my case where my family didn't have much money, but my parents really put in the effort and their energy to make sure we get educated. And so we got educated, they provided food and clothing, we had roof over our head all the time. So it's a little good upbringing. I mean, I sometimes I look back and I ask myself, what would I have done if my parents didn't kind of bring me up the way they did? What would things have turned out to be like? Unfortunately, I lost both parents. So sometimes I look back and I just try to figure out how different my life would have been if I didn't get the kind of upbringing I've had.
Yeah, yeah, and as you mentioned in your video, you found out that you were, tested positive for hepatitis B. You know, Remind me how and when did you find out you were infected with hepatitis B?
Yeah, so everything started, I'll probably say in around 2013. That's when I started kind of noticing that I started feeling tired as time went on, but I never really took it serious because I was working, and just as everyone, if you are very busy, you just feel tired, and I thought it's normal. But in 2014, that's when I really started feeling like something was really going on, because the tiredness was not just one day in a week or one day in 2 weeks. It was becoming more frequent.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes 2 or 3 days in a week, it just became bothersome. And so that's when I really decided to consult with my doctor and see what is going on. So at the beginning, she we did a lot of tests, and she thought maybe it could be depression. But I told her, I don't think there's some situations where I get depressed, but I don't think I'm depressed like every day, every week, or every month. It's once in a while incident. So it's not something that is ongoing or consistent that will be causing me to feel like that, because I was someone who was kind of outgoing. I never sat down. I have to work. I have to go to school. So I was really busy. And all of a sudden, I felt like I just couldn't continue to do what I want to do or what I've been doing. Everything just kind of started slowing down. So after multiple tests, we still couldn't find anything. And so she suggested since we are not finding anything, just maybe for any lack or lack of it, she suggested if I wanted to go to Montgomery, Maryland Department of Health. They run a community clinic where they do kind of a deep test for STIs. And if I was up to it, she doesn't think I have an STI, but if maybe we could find something, because so far we didn't find anything from all the tests we've done so far. Nothing is showing. So when she said, I was like, fine, I need to find answers, so I will do it. So I went to the Maryland clinic, and that is when I did the lab test. And then I think about 2 weeks later, I went back and pick up the results. And that's when I find out that I was Hep B positive.
Yeah. And, when you found out, what was going through your mind? What were you thinking when you found out and you got the results?
Yeah, I mean, so before my results, I've heard about hepatitis B, but I really didn't take the time to kind of read about it or read more or educate myself a lot about it. So when I got the results, I was a little bit shocked. Like I tried to find answers, like how did it happen? Why? Where did I get it from? It was like I had so many, like million questions in my head at that moment, and I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know who to talk to. So once I found out, it was kind of, I was a little bit shocked and surprised at the same time, because I didn't think anything like that was going on. And so I tried to find answers and try to educate myself from that point.
You're pretty resilient. Your liver's resilient right now. But one can define resiliency differently. How would you define resiliency?
Well, to me, I define resiliency as kind of being punched multiple times to the ground, and each time you find way to get up. It could not be, it might not be immediately getting up after being hit, but slowly you find way to get up. So with my situation, everything seems to have been going on very well. And then I found out I had hepatitis B, and all of a sudden it felt like my life have turned upside down. And from that point till this day, it seems like it's all been a struggle. But I just felt like there's no way I'm going to let this struggle kind of hold me down. So I wanted to finish my degree. I had an associate's degree, and I plan on going forward and getting a bachelor's degree. But because of all the health issues, I took 2 years off trying to focus on my health, and nothing improved. So I got to the point where I said, you know what? I'm not going to sit at home and say that I'm going to continue to get better, because I've already spent 2 years and I haven't felt much better. So I need to get back to school. And so in a small way, I went back to school, and I haven't been taking full-time classes. It's one class here, two class here. And so far, since I started in 2019, I haven't stopped. There haven't been a semester that I haven't been able to take a class. And it's one step at a time. It's not, I mean, I have peers that I started with who have graduated, but to me, it's not a race. It's about finishing what I've started rather than getting there quicker. To me, that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what matters is I graduate. So if it has to take me 10 years to get there, I will keep pushing. And so that is my resiliency in a little way. It's like most of my friends think I'm very stubborn because I don't give up easily. And I think that have in a way helped me, because I could have said, you know what, this thing is not helpful. I'm always tired. I'm always in pain. You know what, I give up. I don't want to do this anymore. But that hasn't been the case. I keep telling myself that even in my bad situation, my life is probably better than someone else. So why do I have to shut my life completely down? So there are days that is tough, but I find ways to look at the little glimpse of hope and push through. So to be resiliency to me is like not totally giving up. Even when others being put in your shoe will probably give up, you don't. You keep finding ways to make things happen.
Absolutely. And, it's very encouraging to hear that kind of fighting spirit that coming in from you, Bright. And yeah, I mean, there are folks who might not know what that kind of struggle is, or how to be resilient. But hearing you talk about being able to continue, and you know stubbornness, one might see it as stubbornness, one might see it as resiliency as well. And yeah, I mean, like, I have friends who are resilient, or who have those kinds of instances of being able to be resilient and just keep on pressing forward, and making sure, and that ties into the work we do. It's being resilient in this fight against hepatitis B and liver cancer, whether it be you sharing your story and participating in panels, us educating folks in the different communities. And yeah, I think it on the subject of resiliency, being able to continue to have people be aware so that other people can be resilient as well. I am curious about how, there's research that shows that in Ghana, hepatitis B is an occurring thing there as well. How, in your view, how do you think folks in Ghana are perceiving hepatitis B to be, or if they're even aware of it? Like, what's your take on the hepatitis B situation in Ghana?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I think Ghana is so different from many other countries that have to deal with hepatitis B, and so it's been a little challenge. But so far, uh, sounds like people are getting up to speed, and so they have Hepatitis B Foundation of Ghana, which they go out, they do education, they do testing and screening, and other kind of raise awareness about the disease itself. But there's also stigma that still plays a role in Ghana, that if someone gets diagnosed with hepatitis B, they don't even want to tell anyone, not even their loved ones, because for fear of retaliation, for fear of being stigmatized. That's still been a challenge, and I just hope that at some point, the government of Ghana will really uh, get involved a lot, kind of get involved more in this health situation, because it's a big issue in Ghana. I mean, uh, me, for example, when I got diagnosed, I thought it was just me, who has hepatitis B. But then I found out three of my brothers all tested positive for Hep B too. So 4 out of 5 children have so far tested positive for hepatitis B. And that's just my family. So just imagine other families. So it's a real health, it's a big health issue that I hope at some point the Ghanaian government will step in and do a lot with testing and treatment, because a lot of people they are not aware they have this, and those who are aware they have it, a lot of them have not had the opportunity to have any better follow-up. They don't have any better care because we don't have the resources in Ghana. So it's been a struggle, but there's also some hope, seeing people trying to raise awareness, educate, and do testing in communities. And they have had situations where you have corporations bringing them in to educate their workers about hepatitis B. So it's a slow process, but I believe if the government steps in more, that could speed things up and maybe help in a better way.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like it's a multi-front effort by, like you mentioned, getting government to help in. And, at least here in the United States, we're definitely, privileged to have different facets of, of the government being able to, whether it be immunization requirements, screening when you're having a child here in the United States, so those are ways we are able to catch hepatitis B early on, as well as working towards educating members of our communities and being able to encourage to talk to their families about it as well. I think that's one of the challenges, at least amongst the Asian American Pacific Islander communities, is being able to talk about health alone, let alone hepatitis B. And in your experience, like, did you talk with your family? Was health like a continuous topic amongst your family members or even amongst your friends?
So it wasn't a conversation that would, I mean, once in a while you hear somebody say, people will talk about it and that would be it. But it wasn't something that kind of would sit down and really talk about, like ask my parents, like, what is the sickness or what illness have any family members that I know of or I don't know have contracted, like my grandparents, did they have any? So there wasn't much of talk deeper to look into their family, like past issues of health issues or anything of that sort. But uh, it was difficult for me to talk to my family members about it. And the reason why it was so 2 years before I found out I had hepatitis B, I had lost my mom, and that really shook my family to the core. It was a brutal, it was painful. And so when I was diagnosed in 2014, my family was still struggling from that loss. And so when I found out, I knew I had to tell somebody. I knew I had to talk to them so they can get tested. But at the same time, I felt like telling them was going to worry them, and they might even think that, oh, I'm the next person they might end up losing, and they might be frightened and getting too much concern about it. So I didn't do that immediately. I tried to really kind of bite my time, find a very appropriate time where I feel like the family have gone to a point where my mother's passing is no longer a heavy burden, and the pain have kind of settled down a little bit. And then I can just say, you know what, this is what I found out. You guys should get tested. It's not scary, not in a scary moment like, oh, I'm dying or anything of that sort. So to have a conversation that won't freak them out. And I'm glad I was happy to do that. After 2014, I was able to bide my time and then find some time and started talking to them about it. So I started with my elder brother and then my two younger brothers, and then it went from there. And then I talked to my aunties and my uncle about it. So it was a slow process, but I had to really kind of bide my time and not say much, because they probably, some of them have heard about other people in the same situation. And like I mentioned earlier, stigma is one of the big issues with hepatitis B in Ghana. And so I was very careful how to say things that won't scare them off and won't put them in situations where they might get over worried about it. So I'm glad I was able to bide my time and wait patiently to deliver the news in bits instead of just going full blast on everyone else and pushing them, kind of getting them worried and concerned.
Definitely. Timing does seem to be a factor into having these kinds of conversations. I remember, what was it? It was early 2010, during the before times, before the pandemic. We in San Francisco, we were at a Lunar New Year festival. We had a booth set up talking about hepatitis B. We had on testing, testing on site, and we've had instances of folks not wanting to talk about it. We've had a couple of people who said to our table, who said to us that I don't want to talk about health because it's Lunar New Year. And, I think that's the kind of narrative, that's kind of effort we're trying to shift away from, is encouraging people to talk about health, especially making sure that people are, when they're together with family, they have those kinds of conversations. So, you're right. Definitely timing plays as a factor into being able to talk about that kind of discussion as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, because my younger brother was like that. When I told him and asked him to get tested and make sure his children, he has two younger children and his wife. So I was trying to get him to get them all tested to make sure they are safe. And if they are and they haven't been vaccinated, do everything to make sure they are vaccinated. He didn't want to get tested. And I asked why. He said he just didn't want to know. He didn't want to know whether he was positive or negative. It doesn't matter to him. And I was like, it does matter. It makes a huge difference, because if you test and you are negative and you are not vaccinated, you can get vaccinated. And that is the difference between you doing something and not doing something. If you test positive, it's not the end of your life. You can get treatment if you need to. If you don't need to, all you need to do is get a doctor to monitor you. If it's once a year, you do that, and just to make sure you are safe. So it's not a big deal, but somehow he felt like it was a big problem that he didn't even want to know. And so what I did was I kept nudging at him. I kept nudging at it. Every time we had a conversation, I kept bringing it up until he probably got tired of me talking about it. So he did. And actually, he ended up testing positive too. But lucky, I asked him about his children and his wife, and he said the children were vaccinated when they were born, so they were fine. And he asked the wife, and the wife said she was vaccinated as well. So I was like, you see, there's no harm. At least now we can move on. I don't have to nudge you anymore. But I had to do it because he wasn't budging. I kept on telling him he wouldn't. Even though my elder brother had tested positive, he still wouldn't do it. I had to keep pushing. I had to keep pushing until he finally did. And I was like, you see, it doesn't hurt. Now you know you can protect yourself.
That is resiliency right there.
Maybe a little bit of persistence too.
Exactly. Yeah, speaking of, we're talking about the before times, as I like to call it. How has COVID impacted you? Have you been staying at home, or like, what are you doing? How has your day-to-day shifted from because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different, but I probably am used to it, because before COVID, because of my health, I wasn't doing much physically because of the fatigue. So I was really limited to what I could do. So most of my life was more time spent at home, a few times on campus, and right from classes straight to home, because I just, after 2 hours of classes, I'm done for the whole day. My life was more limited and constrained to the house. So with COVID, it felt like continuous, but it just felt like this carried more weight than just my regular life, where I was able to go out. I didn't have to worry about masks. Sometimes I tried to go to the store and I'll get in a car and then I'm like, man, I forgot my mask. I have to come back in, pick my mask. So these are little things that I have to kind of keep in mind anytime I'm stepping out. Do I have my mask? Do I do this? So it's been a little different, but personally, I don't think it's been a challenge for me, because I'll probably say my life was already challenged in that way because of the limited ability I had to go out. So COVID keeping me indoors, it's not something that is new, but I just feel like not being able to go on campus, because sometimes I go to campus, I run into friends, I run into classmates, and we will talk about things, but I'm not able to do that. And that used to be my way of escaping or getting out of the house to go on campus. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to do that. So it's been a struggle for everyone else. And to me, it's been a struggle and a challenge mentally too, because of hepatitis B and other kind of chronic diseases. You deal with depression, and sometimes not having the ability to get out and do things sometimes puts you in bad situations. But so far, I will knock on wood that everything has so far been manageable to this point.
Definitely. And with the vaccines rolling out, there's light at the end of the tunnel right now. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned about just going straight home. Do you do any hobbies once you get home, or what do you like to do in your spare time?
Yeah, I mean, before everything, I was really physically engaged. So I used to run, play tennis, bike, hike. I mean, just name it, everything, even something I haven't tried, I would just throw myself in and try, you
Mhm.
know. And then once I started having issues with the fatigue and muscular issues, I really couldn't do much. And then throughout the process, I also find out I had asthma. So that also threw me off a lot. And so I haven't been able to do much physically, like the things I enjoy to do, I haven't been able to do much. So mostly the time I spend home is either watching a movie, writing a paper, or YouTube videos, or testing with friends, or calling back to Ghana. Those are my go-to activities. You know, I used to also hang out with friends, like we arrange for lunch or breakfast or something like that and hang out. But I started noticing I will make appointment and then I'll have to call and cancel because I wake up the next day, I don't have the energy to go out. And so I just felt like I didn't need to do that anymore. So I stopped really arranging with friends to hang out. So it's just been text messages. And I mean, I've getting used to Zoom calls because it wasn't something I was big on. I mean, I would rather call in than do Zoom call because of the technology and sometimes the problem with internet connection issues and how to go through it. But so far, I've been good at it. I found a lot of sports activities too that I now watch, like NASCAR, ice hockey, football. I mean, those were all things that I wasn't drawn to before, but now it's like those are all my new hobbies and just more of YouTube videos and documentaries on nature and stuff like that. So it's been a mixed bag of a little bit of everything, kind of whatever is open, and I feel like I can entertain myself with. I try it and see how it goes. So that's been my go-to during the quarantine.
Do you have a favorite team?
Not really. I mean, I follow the team that does well, kind of, or the team that's close to me. So, like with football, I kind of follow a little bit of Washington and Ravens, and then, but I like San Francisco. I like Green Bay Packers. So it's a little bit. I don't have a favorite team, but I watch whoever is playing. I have players that I kind of like the way they play, and so I keep my eye kind of tabs on each one. And then with hockey, I mostly follow Washington Capitals.
Mm.
I've seen them do some amazing things, and it struck me how sometimes you count them out, or everybody counts them out, and then they surprise the rest of the world. Like, no, don't count it out. We are not out yet. It's resilience. Is like they keep getting knocked down, but they find ways to turn things around. So I find somehow a connection in that, and makes me watch them even more.
Mhm. And speaking of things after the pandemic, do you have any plans you want to do once this pandemic's over, or what are you looking forward to in a couple of years from now as well?
Yeah. So my whole plan is so right now my priority is to kind of get through with school. I have about 2 semesters or close to 3 semesters left to graduate. My biggest plan is to focus on that, get that out of the way, and then continue to do my advocacy, community education, and still get involved with the community with my volunteering. And I look forward to going to grad school at some point. I want to get into public health. So I'm moving from social work to public health. And my thought process is I can combine both in what I want to do, kind of my interest in helping people, and at the same time, educating and also raising awareness about diseases and other illnesses that is in the community. I can merge both together and do it. And I also want to, at some point, I would love to travel around the country and visit some of the national parks in the state. I haven't been to many states. Those that I've been to is just drive through. So maybe get the opportunity to stop at some of these places, spend a day or two and look around and visit some of the national parks in the state. I hope we can get COVID behind us soon so everything can open and then we can have some sort of normalcy back to life.
And with regards to, say, for example, someone has just recently found out they are positive with hepatitis B. In your experience, what's one thing you would give them as words of wisdom or words of advice?
Well, I mean, so everybody we are not going to have the same experience, but the common thing to me, since my diagnosis to this point, one thing that I found out is it's not as bad as we all think when we get the news. And that is because we are never prepared or never ready to receive bad news. So we all react, and our reaction is, why me? And start questioning everything. And that is probably part of the reason why we get into depression, because we are in this negative mindset because we don't understand everything that is going on. So to me, it's okay to feel that way. I don't think I would say it's abnormal for anybody to react that way. It's normal. So if you get the diagnosis and you feel like, I don't know what to do, I'm confused, I don't understand anything, that is all okay. My advice is just take the time to think and educate yourself about hepatitis B. Because in my experience, when I got a diagnosis, I didn't have much information. So I had to take time to really educate myself, read a lot about what it is, what I can do, what I can't do. And so I started doing my plus and minuses. And then I got to a point where I was like, well, I was worried when I got a diagnosis, but it wasn't that bad. Like I made it feel like it was, but that was all after, because of the knowledge I've gained from educating myself. So it's very stressful and it's difficult when you get that diagnosis. That I won't deny that, but you have to look positive for the way ahead, knowing that, yeah, you might have this diagnosis. It comes with some challenges, but it's not the end of the world. You can still make your life and move on with your life and do whatever you want to do. It's still possible. So just take your time, go through the process, and you get to a point where you feel comfortable and you feel at peace with your diagnosis. And I think everybody has to go through that process. Give yourself that time and go through the process.
Absolutely. And, words of wisdom, definitely being able to, hopefully people will be able to hear that and, continue to be resilient by that as well. Bright, thank you again so much for sharing your story in general and like sharing your perspective, and just being able to take the time to talk with us. It's been great to know even more in depth from your just be storytelling video and being able to get to know you more. And hopefully the people that are watching this video will be able to follow up with you and see the kinds of other work that you'll be doing in the near future.
Thank you for having me. And I appreciate the opportunity as well. And it was nice talking to you. And like you said, I hope we can continue to spread the word and continue to educate and raise awareness to help our fellow country members and the family members that are impacted by this virus, and help make change in going forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bright. Bright Ansah, everybody.